This is a simple application running on a device with a screen reader on. Imagine you have vision difficulties and you need to use screen reader. This is what you'll hear when you run the app.
Transactions. Lidl, Enlist. Minus $12.45. Stripe. Plus $1,250.34. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7.
Now compare that with the following.
Transactions. You have received $1,250.34 from Stripe to your personal account, Enlist. You've spent $12.45 at Lidl.
Have you noticed the difference? How much easier was it to understand what's going on in the second try? We have to keep in mind the people having difficulties. We have to do our best to make their life easier. In this video, we are going to learn how to optimize for screen readers. To begin, let's look into this transaction class. It is a data class that holds a bunch of properties that describe a transaction. The transaction has an ID, an origin telling us where the transaction comes from, an international bank account number, also known as IBAN, the amount in cents, the destination where the transaction ended up, and finally, we have the type of transaction that describes whether the money flew out from or into our account. We also have these two helper properties that are handy to eliminate feature envy. From here, let's build the UI. I've already defined the transaction screen composable that takes a list of transactions and it has an empty body. I'll start off by creating a scaffold, and I'll pass to it the modifier coming into the transaction screen composable. I'll also apply to it a container color for better support of the dark theme. Keep in mind the dark theme is also an important element when it comes to accessibility. Finally, I'll apply a top bar to the scaffold that will apply a nice header on the top describing what this screen stands for. In this case, we are displaying a list of transactions, and this time I'm hard coding the title, which is fine for the sake of this tutorial. Otherwise, it should be coming from the string resources. Now that I have the scaffold defined, let's put transactions list inside it. At the moment, I don't have such composable, and I'm just about to create it. But before I do that, I'll supply to it the arguments that I'm planning to pass so that the studio will generate the function for me with the arguments rather than me passing them myself manually. I'll pass a modifier that will apply the padding values from the scaffold, and it will take the max size. Also, I will pass to it the transactions. Now, by simply pressing Alt-Enter, the studio will create this function for me. Pretty neat. Next, let's work on this newly created composable function. All we want to render inside here, as the name of the function suggests, is a list of items. So I'll start off by defining a lazy column. I'll pass down the modifier that comes into the function. I'll apply some padding on the sides, making it smaller on the sides and bigger on the top and the bottom. And I'll also add a little bit of spacing between the items that will be rendered inside the list. Inside the content lambda, I'm going to use the items function and pass to it the transactions. That will allow me to work with each and every transaction item. From here, I'll call yet another composable that will be representing a transaction inside the list. I don't have the composable either, and I'll follow the same approach from above to create it. I'll pass a modifier that will help me shape out the list item. I would like the list item to take the whole available width. We'll have a height of at least 72 density points. We'll have a slightly rounded corners. I'll also apply a background coming from the material theme, and finally I'll apply a little bit of spacing around the item itself. That's about the modifier, and I need to also pass the current transaction item that is provided to me from the items lambda. Once again, I'll let the studio do the work for me by pressing Alt-Enter. Now this is where the things get very interesting. This transaction item composable is going to represent one item in the list. Let's start off by creating a row and passing down the incoming modifier. While here, I'll align the contents inside the row in the center vertically. On the left side, I want to display the destination of the transaction, and for that, I'll use a text composable. I want this text to occupy all the available space on the left side, and to achieve that, I'll use the weight modifier. And of course, I'll apply specific style to this text to make it more representative. On the right hand side, I want to show the amount of the transaction, but I also want to display a plus or a minus sign in front of the amount to make it more understandable if it was spending or earning transaction. I would even apply different color to make it more engaging. First, I'll define the prefix that will be a plus if the transaction is a deposit, otherwise a minus. Then I'll define a color that will be green if the transaction is a deposit and red otherwise. Finally, I'll use the text composable to show the amount with a prefix. Also, I'll apply a specific text style and the color we have defined based on the transaction type. From the preview, I can confirm I'm getting to where I was aiming to. I would like to show a little bit more data for the deposit transactions, which is the origin and international bank account number. So I'll create a condition checking if the transaction is a deposit. And in this case, I'll use the column composable. I still want to occupy the available space on the left side. And inside the column, I'll use the text composable to show both the transaction origin and the IBAN. They both will have a specific text style respectively. Since I want this to be displayed only for the deposit transactions, I'll wrap the text composable that displays the destination into the else block. The preview shows that I'm exactly where I was aiming to go. Finally, let's run the app and see what the screen reader will do.
Android devs. Transactions. Legal. In list. Minus $12.45. Stripe. Plus 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's far from how I want the screen reader to announce each and every row. The first thing I want to fix is I want the screen reader to announce the whole row at once rather than each item inside it separately. To fix that, I need to update the row modifier by setting the semantics to merge the descendants. Let's see what happens if I run the app now.
Android devs. Transactions. Actions available. Legal. Minus $12.45. In list. Stripe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Plus $1,250.34.
Now, the items inside the rows are announced at once rather than each item separately. That's great, but I still want the reader to make a more descriptive announcement explaining the transaction rather than, for example, reading the IBAN number like that. So I'll use clear and set semantics function to instruct the screen reader how I want it to announce the row. In case of a deposit transaction, I would like to announce that I have received a certain amount from a specific origin into which account. Otherwise, in case of a payment transaction, I would like to announce that I have spent certain amount at a specific destination. Let's run the app now and see what happens.
Android devs. Transactions. You have received $1,250.34 from Stripe to your personal account, in list. You have spent $12.45 at Lidl.
That's very different and indeed where I wanted to go. Now the screen reader is announcing the different transactions much better, explaining in more details what transaction has happened and all the details around it. Awesome! Thank you for watching, and if you find this useful, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow the link in the description to join the Android Devs community. It's free, fun, and super valuable, I promise. Bye!